Suppose you are a young healer who has gone against the laws of the infirmary you work at, and you have fallen in love with the superintendent there. Now, suppose the superintendent then asks you to do something illegal, something that will obviously affect the infirmary in a negative way. You know that if you say no, you will jeopardize your relationship with him. Yet you know that if you say yes, then this infirmary that your great grandfather co founded will shift hands and will no longer be in your family's hands. What would you do? Would you choose the infirmary or would you choose your man? Well, pineapple. A long time ago in a faraway land, a young healer attempted to hide the glee that crossed her face when she learnt that the great healer of the infirmary she worked at had not only been taken ill, but that the illness was so severe the older woman would not last a week. Matirasa, the young healer, spent an entire afternoon doing her rounds and working in the wards, trying to suppress the smile that threatened to burst out of her face. Yes, as a healer, it was improper to celebrate illness, to celebrate an impending demise, and to hold an anticipatory joy to the likely passing of someone. Yet Mati knew that there was a lot more for her to gain if the great healer Makoni passed. The night Makoni suffered a spiritual attack that left her helpless, bedridden, and unable to either talk or move, Mati waited patiently for her lover in her heart. She knew Mati, that Tangai, who hitherto had been the superintendent of the Healer's Grove, and who had, with effect of Makoni's sudden illness, immediately risen in rank to become the incumbent great healer, would definitely visit her heart that night. Quickly, she stripped and slipped into the tub of steaming hot water in the corner of her heart. As she sank into the almost scalding water, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the mufufu and the mutoa flowers she had sprinkled into the water. A sense of contentment settled over her. Finally, Tangai and I can be together with no interferences. And she let out a pearly giggle. She had just gotten out of the bath and had finished dabbing the pheromone aphrodisiacs she had concocted in the herb garden when a soft knock sounded on her door. She knew exactly who it was, for all healers had been commanded to stay in their hearts until Makoni's attacker was found. So she knew it could only be one person who was still gallivanting in the parts of the grove. She did not bother to wrap a towel over her nude form or to throw on a robe, but simply held her waist in akimbo position and called out, "Come in." She heard the whoosh of an inhale escape out of his mouth the moment he saw her, and even as she heard the door click behind him, she had already rushed into his arms. And that evening, she worked on him, pushing all the buttons she knew made him moan and groan underneath her. All the skills she had amassed in the 3 reigns of their illicit affair, she used them. If there was a time she needed to prove herself to him, it was now. In the last few moons, a part of her had sensed that he was slipping away from her, that something, or ancestors forbid, someone was taking away his attention. But now, with Makoni's sudden illness, Mati knew everything had changed, and Tangai would fall in love with her again. He had to, especially now when she held the keys to unlocking the real leadership of the grove. So she propped herself up with her elbow and looked down at him, her eyes dancing in her sockets. He still looked dazed in the aftermath of coitus, and a feeling of victory soared in her heart. I did this, she thought to herself. I made this man happy. But to his face, she said, "How are you feeling, great healer? Are you happy?" Tangai propped himself up too and looked into her eyes, a smile on his lips. "Oh, how can I not be happy?" he said. "I have you, and now I have this grove. It is said that Makoni had to suffer that, and I am not happy she fell ill. But It is fate, and fate has placed me at the helm. It's yours now, Mati said, barely hiding the glee now. The grove is yours now, and you can do anything with it. You and I can be together openly now, my love, and we can forget the no relationship rule of the grove. Machi saw the shadow that flickered over Tangai's face and did not bother to interrogate what it was. My love, she said, Makoni can never come back. It is impossible. I have never seen anyone who has experienced Kuro and Izinu come back from there. In their luckiest phase, their mind will be altered, and if they are lucky, they will pass. The seat is almost as good as yours now. But by the time she had finished speaking, his face had changed, and all the satiation from their coitus had disappeared. He sat up now and looked at her sadly before saying, It doesn't work like that, my love. Why? Mati asked, sitting up too. Why can't we be together now? The old hag who has been safeguarding these stupid laws is gone anyway, so why can't we be together? Tangai took her hands in his and forced her to look at him before saying, Remember the assembly she told us that the grove would have to choose its leader? He waited for her to nod. Remember she said that there are protections that prevent anyone from taking power arbitrarily? He waited for another nod, then he said, If I take power alone, then the grove will reject me as its leader. But the best position that I can have now is to remain acting great healer. It will still keep me as the head of the grove, and everyone will report to me. But it also means that she has to leave. To leave? What do you mean to leave? Matthew asked. She has to live in the state that she is, vegetative yet alive. Everyone has to know that the great healer is alive, so that no one questions my role as acting great healer. If she passes, then the grove will have to choose who the next leader will be, and I might not be chosen. Matty's lower lip curled petulantly. What about us? She asked. How do we get to be together when you are not the great healer? She watched him smile and felt the squeeze in her fingers as he said, Just a little bit more patience, my love. Just some patience. He was quiet for a while as he massaged her fingers with his. Then he said, I am going to need you, Matty. I need your help. What? She asked, picking up. Whatever would speed up their unity, she was up for it. She was tired of waiting for him in the shadows of the night. She wanted to be with him every day. She wanted the grove to know that she was his. He was hers. She wanted to walk up and down the paths of the grove, holding hands with him. She didn't want to be hidden anymore. I need access to the secret vault, he said, looking deep into her eyes. Matty's heart pounded. Of all the favors she had expected him to ask, access to the secret vault was not one of them. He knew she was not allowed to ever divulge the location of the safe, and only 3 healers could have access to it. The co-founders of the grove, Makoni, Murapi, Muwoni, or their healer descendants, or chosen healers to whom they had passed the keys of the safe. When your father had given her the talk of the keys before she left home, done so with 1,000 instructions. The keys are not only sacred, your father had said, but they hold the secrets of the grove that was established over 6 decades ago. As Murapi's descendant, you are expected to safeguard all those secrets and ensure they are intact when you pass down the baton to whoever will follow your footsteps. It had not only been her father who had told her that. It was the now vegetative great healer Makoni who had said something similar the day Mati had arrived in the grove. The old woman had taken her out of the grove, then led her to a cluster of baobabs in the middle of the forest. 60 years ago, I never thought there would be a time in my lifetime when I could see one of the descendants co-founders come into the grove armed and ready to take on their role as healer. But time did fly, and here we are. Then the older woman's voice had lowered as though there was someone else she did not want to hear the next part of the conversation, even though it was just the two of them. Mati, my child, today I open you up to the real Healer's Grove, the place that has made our infirmary world renowned. I do so with the conscience that you are indeed an honorable person and that you will uphold your great grandfather's legacy. Am I right? She finished, searching Mati's eyes. Mati nodded. Makoni took a deep breath, then reached for the pouch that dangled down your throat and lay in your robes. Your creaky fingers trembled as they wrestled with the knot that secured it, and for a moment Mati was tempted to snatch it from your hands and open it yourself. And she sighed in relief when aeons later the strings from the knot tumbled apart and it opened up. From it, Makoni drew out a small bronze key and said, "This belonged to your great grandfather. It is yours now, and you will pass it on as you will when the time comes, provided that you pass it to a healer within the grove. Now, follow me." They walked into the cluster of trees, and Makoni headed to the smallest, almost inconspicuous Muyu tree, the tree that Mati would have ignored had she come here alone. When they got there, Makoni knelt beside it and beckoned at Mati to come lower. Once both women knelt, Makoni clapped her hands and began clapping, speaking in a low voice. Musikavanu, ancestors, I come with a heart pure and untainted. I seek the physical gifts thus bestowed to me to heal. Open thy vault for me. In return, I will use its contents to serve and to save. My spirit and my intentions are as clear as the water that flows beside the grove. Open for me. Then, with a similar bronze key as the one she had given Mati, she poked into a small, almost imperceptible hole by the side of the small Muyu tree, which then opened up slowly to reveal a deep cave where an assortment of golds and silvers twinkled at Mati. We keep some of the gold that our patients pay here. It is not for personal use. It is for the rainy days where trouble may befall the grove, and we want some gold to fix the trouble. But we are not here for that. The older woman reached out into the cave, then brought out a couple of items, a vial with oils, beaded chains, and a small knob carry. She gave the beads to Mati and had the young healer wear one on your waist and another on your wrist. You shall never remove these beads ever. You bath with them, you sleep with them, you heal with them. When you die, you shall be buried with them. They are the rupao that set you apart from the other healers in the grove. Okay? Mati nodded. Then Makoni handed her the small wooden knob carry and said, a touch wistfully, "This belonged to your great grandfather, and I am sure you would like to have it to remember him by. As a healer, he obviously protected it with enchantments, but it is up to you to find out." Then she picked the vial with oil and said, "And this is the ointment that we shall use to ordain you as the secret keeper of the secret vault. But before that, you have to pledge your allegiance to Msikavanu and the ancestors here." They had gone to the Mawuyu trees way before noon, but it was dusk when they finally left. Makoni had made her repeat the opening chant for the vault countless times, and countless times too, Mati had been forced to try and open the vault on her own with her small key. And when finally she finished the opening chant without a tremble in her voice, and she opened the vault, Makoni had let out a small ululating cry. Then the older healer had taken the vial of oils Mati had already forgotten about and poured 3 droplets into her cupped left palm, then using her right index finger, dipped it into the oil and dabbed the oils onto Mati's brow, her cheeks, then her chin and throat. And as they walked back to the grove, Makoni kept reiterating the need for the vault's secret. You shall never take anyone to the Mauyu trees, let alone try to open the vault for them. For if you do, and that person hears the opening chant and learns how to open the vault, then the protection that you will have will fall off, and the power you have will transfer to that other person. And the claim that the Murapi family have to the grove will have transferred too. You would have sold your soul. And these words were ringing in Mati's ear now as she sat with Tangai on her bed. She knew he knew that besides her and Makoni and Muwoni's descendant, whenever he or she chose to come, the vault's location had to remain a myth to everyone else. So in the dimness, her heart bubbling with an emotion she could not explain, Mati whispered, I can't, Tangai, I can't. I know, my love, she could hear the rue in his voice. I know it is a big ask. It is just that his voice trailed off into silence. Just that what? Marty asked after the silence had gone on too long. She heard him sigh. Then he said, just that I thought you loved me and that you would want me to succeed on this mission so that we can be together. I thought you valued our love. But it is okay. I know what I mean to you now. And as he said this, he was beginning to rise from the bed. Wait, Mati said, pulling him back down by his bicep. Maybe there is a workaround. What is it you want in the vault, and I can get it for you? He sat back down and he was looking into her eyes searchingly again before saying, You still do not trust me, do you? She had opened her mouth to answer, but he promptly dismissed her and said, I need a herbal god that I believe Makoni hid there. Years ago, when I was just starting out here, I made a potion which, when I administered it, kept a person in a coma for years. Makoni took it, labeling it dangerous medicines, but I know she did not throw it away. I could make another gold, but the medication takes at least a year to concoct and brew perfectly. Look, he took her hands again. We do not have the time. Makoni could pass any time soon. We need the medication yesterday. Mati nodded and said, What did the gold look like so I can get it for you? It was brownish red, Tangai said, and had a danger symbol of a skull on it. Okay, she said, I will get it for you. The next day, Mati gave the slip and walked slowly to the Mauyu trees. There, she made her chants and unlocked the tree. As always, an assortment of trinkets and odors assaulted her vision and her nose. There are just too many things here, she thought to herself as she began rummaging through the vault. She lifted all the golds she found, one after the other, but none looked like it was what Tangai was looking for. She returned to Tangai that afternoon with the news. He was waiting for her in his office, and he paced to and fro agitatedly. I couldn't find it, she told him. He gave her a dead stare, nothing like the loving stares he gave her when they were alone in her heart, or the serious glares he gave her during the day as he pretended they did not know each other personally. This stare had her shivering, but what was more chilling were his next words. It's okay, you are dismissed. And he turned his back to her and watched the soft drizzle outside the office. Yet Marty stood there for a while as she wondered whether being dismissed meant being dismissed for now or forever. She waited until he had turned back to her and shivered again at his dead stare when she said, "What do I do now?" He laughed with no mirth. "Nothing. Isn't it you have showed me how much I mean to you? You can leave." There was something about the emphaticness of his last statement that made her know that he was serious, that their dalliance was over. So she said, her voice almost pleading, "Please allow me to try one last time." But he shook his head and frowned dismissively. "Leave," he said. "From now on, you and I are colleagues. You attempt to cross the colleague boundary again, then we will have to pull out the rules. Please, leave now and do not return." Mati could see the seriousness in his face, in his expression, and she knew that he meant it. And heartbroken, she left. The following 2 days were hard for her because for the first time since she had come to the grove, she felt utterly lost. Her heart ached like it had had some part severely wrenched out of it. Her eyes were filled with a pain that watered them, and even the slightest fly that buzzed in her direction led to a spill over. And her stomach had been filled with a stone that made it difficult for her to eat anything. On the third day, when the pain had finally grown too unbearable for her to bear, her mind obeyed the commands of her feet and she walked to his office, barging in through the door with not so much as a knock. Of course, his head jerked up. He was startled to see her, but she did not give him an opportunity to speak, hurriedly saying before he even opened his mouth, "I will take you to the sacred vault so you can search for the potion yourself." She watched as his face changed from stoicism to satisfaction, but in a serious voice he said, "You know what you're doing, right? I wouldn't want to one day be accused of forcing you to do this against your will." Relief had already flooded her body, and she said, "There is no such thing that will happen. Isn't we will be together forever?" Later that afternoon, they walked out of the grove at separate intervals and in different directions. They regrouped almost immediately after, and Mati was happy to see some light return to his face. He was no longer the guy who had roughly told her to leave his office, and again she was reminded why she had fallen so hardly for him. "Once we get the herbal gold," he said now, "we will wait for 6 months for the dust to settle and for everyone to be convinced that Makoni is no longer coming back. Once we are done, then you, my love, and I will be together and we will run the grove as husband and wife. Okay?" Martin nodded, the words fueling her footsteps, deleting all the misgivings in the world. "I hear you, love," she said now, slipping her hand into his and increasing her pace, hoping that the sooner they got to the sacred vault, the sooner they would marry. But the sooner they got to the Mauyu trees, the quicker Mati felt something different in the air. It was as though somebody had tampered with the holy place, as though a presence had been there before them. She stalled, her hand slipping out of Tangai's, and turned to look at Tangai to warn him, but he gripped her elbow and said, "Come on, let's go." But the closer they got to the smaller Muwuyu tree, the more Mati's spirit sensed something was utterly wrong. Again, she tried to warn Tangai, yet his strides had increased, and there was a favor, an excitement in his pace, that she took a deep breath and walked on. And there, proving Mati's intuition right, kneeling by the small Muwuyu tree, rummaging in the sacred vault, was a woman's figure. Mati and Tangai only had a brief second to glance at each other before they both turned and half ran towards the vault, calling out, "Thief, stop! Get away from the vault!" And as though Mati could not be shocked any further, she watched as the kneeling figure turned to look at them, and recognition made both her and Tangai stop in their tracks. The intruder, Yemurai, the grove's youngest apprentice and Mati's friend, was staring at them in horror and in shock. To be continued. Thank you guys for watching and listening all the way to the end. I appreciate you being here. This story is part of a series of stories set in a pre-colonial African hospital, and it explores the intrigue and mystery surrounding the hospital and its characters. Please continue tuning in for the next installments. Also, do not forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share with other people. In the meantime, lots of love and goodbye.